as we assume, anticipate, and analyze the challenges and solutions for the education world in our candid COVID classroom, where we meet and greet the new norm. एक सवाल उठ रहा है माता पिता के मन में, अपने बच्चों को कहीं ना कहीं जाके कॉलेज में एडमिशन की जरूरत पड़ेगी।
हमें तो बल्कि 4 लाख सीट बना के
In our formative years, yes, principles do matter.
Really an across the globe symposium.
Hello and welcome to Edumate TV. I'm Chetan Sharma. In our ongoing series, Principles Do Matter, wherein we salute, recognize, respect, and engage with our dear school leaders. Those leaders who, of course, taught us all throughout our schooling years that it's values and principles that do matter. But we say it's actually you principles that do matter. And today is special, simply because not just we've got a fascinating guest list, but also because it's the pious day of Guru Purnima. So we take this opportunity to salute each and every one of you. Thank you, dear teachers, for doing what you've done. Thank you for being our mentors, our gurus. We look forward to learning from you all along our lives, as well as, more importantly, over the next 60 to 70 minutes. Let's take a look at who our wonderful gurus are for today.
We have a list of very special guests lined up for today's symposium. Let me introduce them one by one. First up is Dr. Kavita Gupta, School of Entrepreneurship, Rishihood University, Sonipat. Up next is Mrs. Anjana Pandey, Principal, Mount Letras C School, Lucknow. Up next is Mrs. Aradhana Rana, Director, the Icon Public School, Ahmednagar. Her education qualifications are MSc B.Ed. She has an experience of 40 years in the field of education. Her awards and recognitions are Sanjeevani Seed of Knowledge Award, Leading Educationist of the Year Award, Nalanda Pride of Knowledge Award, and Mother Teresa Foundation Award for contribution to education and social welfare. Her life motto is I can, I will, and her COVID mantra is be positive in attitude to be negative for COVID. Life balances out. Welcome to our symposium, ma'am. Up next is Mr. Kanu Charan Panda, Principal, NRI International School, Bhadrak, Orissa. A very warm welcome to all our eminent guests.
Indeed, a very, very warm welcome to each and every one of you wonderful educationists. We look forward to hearing from you over the next 80 minutes. The speaker for today, it's a warm welcome to Kavita Gupta from Rishihood University. What a pleasure to have you on our program. Let me just set up the context, which is rather exciting. And it's exciting simply because it's new. And everything that we are experiencing in this historic period, moment by moment, seems to be new. So how not careers? At a time when Google has anonymously maintained that in about half a decade from now, half the jobs are going to be lost. What's even more sinister, we don't know which half. That's the state of affairs. Then, if you look at the new education policy, it talks very seethingly in terms of multidisciplinary skilling and taking a very new approach to life in education through multi-skilling. And number 3, which is perhaps to India's detriment, that despite 70 years of independence and the world's youngest population, we've simply not been able to take advantage of the demographic dividend. In fact, in 70 years, we are at our epitome, at our highest point in terms of unemployment and unemployability. In an environment like that, we are almost pushed to look at new options. Not just new options, but also old options with a new lens. And finally, given your subject matter expertise, our Prime Minister says we have to be a country, not just of job seekers, but of job creators. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Actually, you have given the answer where you said that half of the jobs could become redundant, but we really don't know which ones.
Not just innovation, which is the buzzword, the ability to explore. I think exploration is equally important, along with innovation, because innovation, it can be almost anything, but exploration requires you to go and contest with something which will ultimately be very different. So thank you for that, Kavita ma'am. Let's get Aradhana ma'am's voice in. Thank you for joining us, Principal Aradhana. Now, universities have somewhat an advantage over schools, and that is that they have the flexibility in terms and proprietary in terms of curriculum. Now, and they have flexibility in terms of structure. But in schools, which are rather regimented, right, and control and structure in terms of pedagogy as well as curriculum. For you, not that easy. Yet, it will be such a disservice to our students if we provide them a structured school education and we expect them to open up in a university. So how are you, as an icon on a public school, representing this?
Good afternoon, Chetan. First of all, very honored to be on this forum. And, before I say anything, your opening address was excellent. I differ a bit on what you opened with when you said Google says half the jobs will be redundant, and we don't know which half. We actually know which half. Because the way the world is opening up, and especially, to me personally, I really believe this COVID 1.5 years has sort of taken us forward by 20 years. And notwithstanding the health issues and whatever the society has gone through. But in the education system, it's been, I wouldn't say it's been a boon because it sounds very callous. But it's been really rewarding for the educational system because it's opened our eyes to so many things which would have taken us many, many years to actually figure out. So, especially in this 1.5 years, the way we have seen teachers, I talk from the point of view of schools, the way they have adapted to this whole technology. And our eyes have literally opened up to technology. People like me, I didn't know many things, many apps existed. And today we are so apt at it, and it just, and the students, more than the teachers, the students, the kind of learning, Chetan, I'll tell you, when I started this school, this was about 12 years ago, in class 1, common sense told me that flipped learning was a very good method. And I've studied in schools and colleges where we were taught to think for ourselves and not really, given spoon-fed. So I wanted to do it in my school. It wasn't taken well. And I spent years training the teachers, changing their mindset to a concept called flipped learning. And though in our school it did, because, I started the school and I implemented it, it was happening a bit, but overall they still their minds were not open to it because our assessment systems were very regulated. But these 2 years, I'm so glad the things that were my vision, they have suddenly, opened up, and teachers are accepting it. The board is accepting it. I don't know how long they will, take to actually implement it, because it's not so much the learning system, it's the assessment system they have to change. So unless they change the board assessment system, none of it will have any effect. And they will have to, because the way they've changed this teaching learning system in the NEP, they will have to change the assessment system. And once that changes, this is where the real learning and real, actually the rewards will come in. So right. We know which half is going to be redundant. Anything that a machine can do is going to be redundant. So your learning tables, redundant, because we have calculators. So similarly, on a higher level, anything that a machine can do will be redundant. But anything that has to be fed into the machine will become Very, very important. So that is the kind of path we have to take. So whether it is e-learning, whether it is anything to do with computers, it is going forward in a big way. And then social media. These things are not important a few years ago. How important they are because of projection of what we do. So these careers are going to become very important. Health is going to be very important because all these things that we are going through are detrimental for health. So eventually psychiatry, psychology, nutrition, exercise, training, all this has to become important. Then marketing will become very important because sitting at home, this is what we've learned. Where could I have ever imagined that I'll be talking to Chetan Sharma? So this has given me this platform. Sitting here, I talk to the best. I'm interacting with these principals from all over. Where could I have gone to Lucknow or Orissa to interact with them? So, all this has been fantastic. And this is the way forward. We are not going back. It may come out to be hybrid learning, a bit of blended learning, but this is the way forward. And we have tasted this thing now. So now it's going to be very difficult to go back to the typical rote learning books and exams and question answers and, right and wrong. And these academies that are mushrooming all over. What are they doing? They're teaching, children MCQs, 200 MCQs in a day. How is it relevant? So eventually, maybe not in a year or two, maybe in another 5 years, they will realize it is no value altogether. Life skills is important. How you cope with, all this is important. So lifestyle changes, a lot of career opportunity will come up in lifestyle, will come up in hospitality and tourism, because after sitting on the computers here and learning and teaching and everything, you need to get out. You need to explore the world. Environment is going to be very important. So these kind of careers are going to, blossom, and the other 50% will become redundant. So that is the point I take, that we all know actually what is going to be redundant. We must address it now. As school leaders, we must influence the lawmakers, the people in the system to make these changes, because in another few years, the world would have changed. And I think much for the better. Thank you.
Brilliant, quite brilliant, your understanding and analysis, Archana ma'am, Radhana ma'am. Really a pleasure to hear you on the program today. And thank you for giving us insights and cues, not just into the necessity of an alteration or a relook at the evaluation system in schools, which is important for us to imbibe flexibility. But I guess more importantly, the career choices you mentioned, and of course you highlighted marketing and communication in your discourse. I'll tell you where the point of Google came, and this is not just for sake of argument, but it's for sake of perspective. The fact was not about redundancy of jobs from the point of view that those jobs would be irrelevant. So the Google analysis was about the demand and supply of jobs, which goes to say that jobs will be replaced through artificial intelligence and robotics. But most importantly, there will be no demand because of the oversupply of those jobs.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. The job of a doctor is not redundant.
Yes.
Right? It'll never be redundant. But the fact of the matter is today, even doctors don't have jobs. So it's not redundant, but it may not be the most pertinent. So the job will be lost. It will not be redundant. That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Right? So while in the same breath, the entire healthcare sector has enormous opportunities. So a lot of the doctor's role is being used already. The supply is large, but people are not looking beyond that sector. That's why I said, and in fact, when I was talking, when I introduced Kavita ma'am also, it's not just about looking at new careers. It's looking at the old sectors also with a new lens, a new perspective.
Yes.
Look beyond the older, the stereotypes of professions. I think that was the perspective. But lovely hearing your points of view. What about you, Principal Anjana? What's your understanding of new age careers, and how are you approaching it with your young bright minds in school?
as Ma'am Aradhana rightly said, we'll have more of nutrition people coming up. We'll have more of psychologists coming up, and we'll have more of children doing fine arts. This is something really, really is great, and I feel a lot of career addition and a lot of value addition has been done by the new education policy which the government has set up.
True. And I'll get a response from Kanu, sir, on this. Thank you for joining us, Kanu, sir. Good to see you, on our program today. Even today in schools, about 65% of our students, if you look at any school by and large, are preferring science, right? And about 20-25% odd is preferring commerce, is going to college. So I think about 10 or 15 is looking at humanities. In a situation like that, what has been your interaction and findings, with the students, the principals, and the counselors at your institution? And how are you, as an educationist, sensitizing them with this very important change, because they shouldn't be coming out for shocks, later on in their career? So,
those students who are taking science and commerce and humanities, there is nothing different. In the professional, all are equal, but choosing the students, they are something, they think that it is different. As per their life and their guide and mentor, they are going to choose the stream. And
to be able to deal with the situation wherein you find that your raw material, so to say,
Yes.
Before you convert that into a finished product, is far more resilient and far more reactive to your knowledge dispensation. What is your understanding from our dear principals? What have been your key takeaways?
So this discussion has been really insightful to me as a higher educator and in higher education. And what I'm very glad about is what Aradhana ma'am said, that the idea of having flipped learning, blended learning is all that we started, at least in India, only at a much higher level. So there were already these students were set in their thoughts, and they only thought as to how to crack the exam and get the marks. And now, if, as Aradhana ma'am said, that there is understanding being implemented, is being given to the students at that level, and right from a very young age, they are able to, they are used to thinking for more insightfully on ideas that we are going to take them up on later.
All right. Now, coming to the second part of our discussion, and that is because we've established that new age careers is the new thing one has to contend with, one has to consider, and one recommends it. We'll examine that in just a moment when we return after the break. Stay with us.
अब ऑनलाइन का बच्चा अंकल सुनो, A for asymptomatic, B for blood test, C for corona, D for distancing, E for essential, F for fault ventilator, G for go corona go, H for hand wash, I for immunity, J for jobless, K for kada, for lab. Lockdown, M for mask, N for negative report, O for oxygen, P for pandemic, Q for quarantine, R for red zone, and also Ramdev Baba. S for sanitizer, T for tali, U for unlock, V for vaccine, W for work from home, X for Xi Jinping, Y for yellow zone, or Z for Zoom call.
Principles to matter. We're discussing the all-important subject of new age careers. We're almost in sync between our school leaders as well as our university representatives that it is a matter of fact that new age careers is the new thing happening, and all of us need to train and retrain our minds to ensure that our students get the best of it to make them employable. The question is, how is this synergized between the schools and the colleges, for which there needs to be an exchange of information, desires, wish lists, and intentions between the two. So let's first understand from our dear school leaders, what is it that they expect from universities going forward? What is their wish list? We'll start with you, Aradhana ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you, Chetan. Before telling you what we expect from universities, I think first what we expect from the board. You just saw this clip where Johnny Liver was, reciting this A to Z. And it was so nice because suppose a child in my school, does it like this, would I accept it? So this is the basic change that we have to develop right at that level. I would probably reward a child if the child did not say A for apple and said a contemporary word, because it's the sound of A is learning. I mean, why would he say A for apple? I mean, this translates from nursery to other classes and right on top. Again, there are status guidelines given that the board expects us to create critical thinking, problem solving, independent, innovative students from schools whom they do not let us be creative, innovative, and all these things. Where does it all add up? So first of all, especially, I agree, it cannot do it for the whole country. There are schools which have to be monitored, but schools, they have trust in us because we are teachers, we are principals, we are raising a generation. And the kind of, the framework they give us is so tight that we cannot move. We cannot use any creativity. One. So unless the schools do that, there's very little we can do to give you the kind of creative children your universities require. What do we expect of universities? Universities are all taking the criteria of assessment of rote learning. They are taking what the student puts on paper. Which university? You see the foreign universities now, of course, they're very good universities coming up which ask for portfolios. But our children, they just, I'm tired of telling them, build up portfolios, build up, communication skills, build up community work, these kind of skills. But they just don't have the time because their whole focus is on marks. Because the universities expect a grade. They tell me, this is ma'am, when we go for NEET, when we go for JEE, it's a rank that counts. They're not asking us what community work we did. So these kind of things, have to be rethought at that level where where I think we should all sit together as schools and universities, and there should be a continuous process. In schools, we actually don't need to teach children all this theory. I'll give you a little example of a language, Hindi. We are Indians. We need to promote the language Hindi. But we make it so tough that those words are never used even on TV by your anchors. Where is the child going to use those, difficult long words unless he is studying Hindi as a language technically, which he can do much later. So at class 1, we are teaching the children such bombastic words the child cannot understand. He develops an aversion to Hindi. Similarly, for all subjects, what we are teaching the children, they develop an aversion to studies rather than a love for studies. So the attitude development, the skill development, life skill development, that is what is needed in school. The theory part of it, the brain is much more developed as he reaches university. What a child does in 3 years in school, he'll probably do 1 year in your universities. So teach him then, depending on which path he's taking. Now, Johnny Liver, if he can't pass his 10th because he can't do maths, can you imagine he would have never reached here? This man is making not only a living out of it, he is earning millions out of it because he's got the communication skill. So this is what we need to hone right in school rather than at university. We give them a choice in universities. Study 12 subjects in school, then you see. You study all subjects, but the level of subjects taught should be such that they're just exploring opportunities and not really learning to qualify for universities. So if we can do that with schools, I'd be very glad. And if the universities could ask for these skills, I'd be very glad, because then the schools would provide it.
Wonderful. Very, very well said. And I think Kavita ma'am is taking she's making her notes, so she will respond to it to understand how they're doing it at the Rishiyod University, for instance. But very valuable point. And particularly when you spoke about television anchors, for a moment we thought that perhaps if we want to revive the language of English, we should get Mr. Shashi Tharoor to answer, perhaps anchor some of our shows. But that will be a little over the top, wouldn't it? But yeah, in good jest, you're absolutely right. In fact, we do even train our younger anchors, to use simple words.
Yes.
Because that's the power of communication. I mean, life is supposed to be simple. Communication is supposed to be simple. The more you complicate it, the more you create opportunities for misunderstanding. So it's a brilliant point that you brought out, and I'll get a response from Kavita. What about you, Anjana ma'am? What is your understanding, your wish list, your desire from universities?
Mr. Chetan, I would like to tell you here and address the members, those who are present, that at the grassroots level, we are looking at so many aspects of curriculum building, the education, and really working hard to help our children to reach out to universities.
I think that the university and school both are vice versa, will produce the good things at university, and university will come and it will show the seed in the school again, and it will bloom again in the university.
I'd like to know from you as a university representative, how are you addressing this at the Rishiyod University?
So first and foremost, Chetan ji, I'd really like to thank you for bringing this opportunity, to have the principals, and we are having a one-to-one, which makes it so different from just reading an article about school education and higher education and how they should be brought together. And so definitely we've been saying all along that it's the higher education is, and the school education is working in tandem, really. But what Aradhana ma'am said about trying to get, creativity is so important, and in childhood we in fact try to curb it. So that I'm very glad you said it, and now I think we will also try and make more effort at trying to find out the finer nuances of the student rather than just plain marks. Right?
Wonderful. I think that's exactly what this process is all about. It's by an exchange of ideas and to bring people together to learn and be more sensitive to each other's point of view and each other's limitations, their challenges and their expectations. Because at the end of it all, if you're able to, as a university, match the expectations of the school leaders, then who will benefit? Well, it's going to be our student. That's exactly what Edumate TV stands for, is employability. And our motto is to represent and be responsible for higher education for our students. Before we end the show, our final section that's called the NEP. Now, you've heard of the NEP 2020. This is the NEP 2021. It's an exclusive by Edumate TV. The NEP 2020 was the National Education Policy. Now, what is a policy but a document, unless and until it's implemented? And to implement a policy, you require a sense of purpose, a sense of promise. And this is the National Education Pledge. But I'm going to go across to each of you educationists to let us know what is the pledge that you will take as a leader on this auspicious day of Guru Purnima. I'll start.
Thank you, Chetan. Pledge, I would actually like to pledge that I would, encourage students to imbibe a sense of values and attitudes, because that is what works in life. The rest just follows. If you have the right attitude, if you have the right values, the rest is immaterial, it just follows. And I would like to pledge my commitment to making schools more creative, innovative, and probably compassionate also, because I truly believe that there are certain qualities which are required in professions which we just don't test. I mean, a medical student, any NEET exam he'll qualify. Where do you test that a doctor should have compassion? How do you test that a doctor is going to be empathetic, have a sense of service? Why don't you ask what community service is done? So this kind of value added is very, very essential. Similarly, an engineer, JET, he'll do his physics, chemistry, physics, chemistry and maths very well. But what are you testing? His innovative skills, his problem-solving skills not being tested. So this is how the gap comes in employability and the education we're giving in. So I would really pledge that I would encourage my students to more attitude building rather than anything else. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. What a wonderful pledge. So focused and, absolutely impactful. Anjana ma'am, your pledge in Edumate.tv.
At this forum, I pledge that I would make school a place where children would really want to come, not to back out. I want my children, those 2 crore children, back to school. So this is what I pledge for today.
Brilliant. And what about you, Kanu, sir? What is your pledge in Edumate.tv?
Yes, sir. What I am doing in my school and my pledge is for my students that they must be innovative and in a positive attitude, positive environment. They must have to learn from the book, and they must use that practically to the outside of the school or outside of the book. And
wonderful. How reassuring from each of you, Aradhana ma'am, Anjana ma'am, and Kanu ma'am. And finally, your word, Kavita ma'am, your pledge on Edumate.tv.
Okay, then I pledge at Edumate TV to be more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable in whatever I do.
Brilliant. And I pledge at Edumate.tv to continue to bring to you such wonderful conversations between school leaders and university representatives with the sole intention of making this vast and vibrant country more employable. And of course, to make the journey for our dear students from schools to universities a far more impactful, resilient, meaningful, as well as fulfilling one, and not to forget, a seamless one. And to you, our dear school leaders, what can I say? You gave and you forgave. You instilled courage as you encouraged. Amid strain and restraint, composure, compassion, completion, respect, response, responsibility. Often reconciled, seldom recognized. You gave us our attitude, you gave us our aptitude, and today we beyond gratitude. You taught us that values and principles do matter, but we say it's actually you principles who do matter. Thank you for being such an inherent, integrate, intense, and such a meaningful part of our lives. We thank you for what you've done, and we look forward to you doing much, much more as you progress in your wonderful careers. I often say to fight the big C of COVID, you require the 3 C's of being corrective, collective, and creative. And all of you wonderful educationists, Anjana ma'am, Kanu sir, Aradhana ma'am, and Kavita ma'am have been just that. Thank you for being that. And of course, thank you at the end of it all to ensure that to educate better, you'd better edumate. Have a good evening.